Thanks for joining me, Shannon Beasley. It is good to see you in Zoom person or Riverside person, I suppose, after many years away. When was the last time we saw each other in real person? This is probably like 10 years or something, right?
At least I was trying to remember that the other day, actually.
Savannah's wedding, and we're going to, inside baseball here. We have a mutual friend that we went to college with, and we actually were interns at the same place at one point too, right?
Yeah, Savannah and I were working at the same place and then brought you in, or just like dropped your name and they ended up scooping you up, of course. Man, that really feels like an entire lifetime ago.
It does feel like a lifetime ago. Yeah.
I feel like that was at least a decade ago. So,
well, we were in college 15 years ago or more now. And 10 years ago, I think is when maybe Savannah's wedding was. And that was probably the last time I went down and saw a bunch of people in Knoxville. So we both, for context listeners, we went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. What was your degree in, or what did you end up studying? I can't remember.
Biomedical engineering.
Yeah, biomedical. That's right. So we were both in engineering. I was in mechanical engineering. Shannon was in biomedical. And then we've both made big shifts in our career and now own agencies. So what do you know? Small world. It's funny how it all comes back to something totally unrelated and you don't expect it, but this is life, right?
Yeah. And I saw you posting on LinkedIn about your journey and just, little tidbits here and there. And I was just like, I've got to talk to Karl. Like, we have such similar backgrounds and such similar swerves in career decisions. So
yeah, it's funny. Well, let's just jump into what you're working on now, because this is obviously your primary focus. So Acorn to Oak strategies, or how do you usually refer to it? Acorn and Oak?
Acorn to Oak, that's right.
Acorn to Oak. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's a long one.
I know. And I'm sure it'll morph over time, right? You'll eventually buy the short domain or something.
Yeah. I went against all the advice in naming my business, but
where did the name come from? Acorn to Oak. I imagine it's about growing up and growth and that kind of thing.
Yeah. It is. And it's funny because when I started as this mindset of being an agency, and we're delivering on this very specific skill set and work and things like that. But I always had a bigger purpose. It's not about website views or social media and all this other stuff. It's about the growth that comes from that. So I wanted something that symbolizes. It's less of a symbol. It's literal in the name, but it just made sense at the time. My daughter also, she was, I guess, 3 at the time, would bring home all these little acorns. And so it was just something that was on my mind a lot because I see these little tiny acorns everywhere and it just made sense.
I love it. I love the personal connection too, because I think that's I don't know. I mean, it visually makes sense. Acorn to Oak. I get that it's about growth. That kind of immediately in my mind, I assume it's something growth related. So tell us what the business actually does today, and we can kind of step into the bigger picture in the future as well as we go.
Yeah. So today I've got about 10 or so clients on the what I call the local side. And so I started as, search engine optimization, web design, anything that will increase that digital presence. Social media is in there, Google business profile management. And we just tailor it to who needs what. The roofing client that I have already came to me with 10 years of experience, 15 really. And so that, scope of work varies from the pressure washer that just started their business last year. And so budgets also vary. So we're just very tailored on what's going to give it the biggest bang for their buck now so that we can both grow together. And yeah, it's so important to be at the top of a search result. And the way that you there, there's no blueprint for that by design.
I imagine for local businesses that being that top result for pressure washer in Knoxville or wherever neighborhood even is so valuable. But also I imagine there's a bit of client education that comes with telling them about how SEO works and the kinds of things you have to invest in to get there, right? What are some of the fun sides / challenging sides of working with local businesses?
Yeah. Everyone does everything on their own. And that's both fun and challenging. And I can relate to that too. As a small business owner, I do everything on my own until I get to a point where I'm this is not efficient anymore. But it's harder to steer people in that direction too, because they're so used to doing things on their own. It's their baby, they're really, really attached to it. Whereas if you're working for a company that's bringing in, 50 million in revenue versus 5 million, then there's less attachment there, but also, there's less impact on like those really small choices. So I think it's just, there is a lot of education involved. And I tell all of my clients, like whether they're prospects or, actual paying clients, that I'm going to give them a high level overview of what we're talking about, because I can get really into the specifics and I'm going to lose you. You're not here to learn how to do the things you're paying us to do it. And here are the results that we have from other clients, like our proof of concept or social proof in a way. So it's really like a balancing act. And I have some clients that want to know about very, very specific things that it took me like years to learn. And then I have other clients that are just like, I don't care what happens, just, move me up in the ranks and like, show me the money.
How long have you been at this with your own agency, Shannon?
I started officially launched my website in November 2023.
Okay. So less than a year. We're talking now in August 2024. So less than a year in. But like how did you get the skills to do this is my question. Because this is kind of, again, going back to our openers, we were talking like we both studied totally different things from what we're doing today. And that's kind of, this is just one of my like career notes to everybody who asks, what should I study in college or what should I do with my life? I'm like, dude, who cares? Doesn't matter. Like, just go study something that you kind of like, and then you'll figure something out. Right. Like that was that's my path. So I assume that works for some other people. But how did you get from biomedical engineering out of college? And I know we were technical writers together, so we had some writing there, into then SEO and local SEO and marketing in general. Like, what was your path like?
Very unexpected. The only reason I started as an engineering major was to honestly prove my dad wrong, who said something about women and science and things like that. I don't know what it was at this point, but I was like, okay, hold my beer. Like, let me do this for like 7 years. It's going to take a while, but
that was me too. I had a high school physics teacher who told me, Karl, you're too much of a cut up. You're never going to get like a degree in engineering. And it took me 6.5 years as well. So I was I was not a diligent student, but I did make it.
Same. I lived a very YOLO life in college. I was like, who cares about prereqs? Like, I'm just going to do what I want to do. I actually failed Calc 1 because of my attendance, not because of my grades. And so the next semester I took Calc 1 and Calc 2 at the same time, just to like get it out of the way. But it was a very different time in life. But in the middle of college, my dad actually passed away, and who was like the reason why I was getting this degree. And I had like a mini existential crisis when I was, my 20s, and took a couple years off, kind of did random things, just super, super random. Still worked in engineering as an intern somehow, as I wasn't even like technically enrolled in college at that point. Really strange. But it gave me the opportunity to work in engineering, and decided that's not necessarily where I saw myself. And just to make money, and pay my bills, I was working at a company called Lululemon, who is a global, athletic retailer. And that is really where I started my accidental marketing career, because, I came in as someone who is just selling stretchy pants, but I ended up managing teams, managing the store, doing a lot with, product and marketing. And at that time, actually, here in Knoxville, we only had what was called a showroom. It wasn't even a full store. So we were doing everything. We were sending out product emails. I was choosing which products to send out in those emails. Then I was finding people to put in those products. I was taking the photos, then writing the emails. And so I accidentally found myself marketing for this global company on a local level, So I literally fell into it. And from there, I ended up kind of hitting a ceiling there. I didn't want to take the path that I needed to grow with that company. It would require like moving or other things that I just wasn't in the cards at the time. And so I ended up getting a project management certificate because I was doing so much project management, managing a store, managing product, managing community events, like all of this combined, and leverage that to get a role at a digital marketing agency. So it's a very big shift, but still in marketing, advertising in a way. And I ran the project management team for our delivery for email campaigns. So, and the clients that we worked with were huge, billion-dollar clients sending hundreds of thousands of emails. So, I wasn't involved directly in that work, but I was managing the teams, managing the projects, and so that shift in mindset with hitting the bottom line of these large companies, I wanted to take a little bit more local and have a good impact on these small to medium-sized businesses that weren't even on the radar. And, we can give, a lift in revenue that's going to literally change their lives versus these gigantic corporations that are just, okay, great, that helps us hit our Q2 goals. And, it's just very different working.
It's very different when your point of contact is someone who is deeply invested in that business because they started it or they live it. It's their local thing that they go to every day, versus you go work for a middle manager. Again, as an agency, you get paired up with a middle manager at a big corporation, and they're just kind of stair stepping their way to the next role. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we work with big companies, and I love some of them just fine. But also, you get a different level of energy and commitment, right? I mean, it's just way more exciting to go to work with people who are really jazzed about what you're doing.
Right.
So what drew you to then go start your own thing and become an entrepreneur? Because, it's funny. I was thinking back to our experience together in college. I similar, had some weird experience where I worked at restaurants and then also did engineering internships. And I think that was gave me a good blend of skills and work experience, and also made me realize I don't want to work in the food service industry forever. But you then took working at a big marketing agency that works with bigger clients and said, I want to go start my own thing. Was it more of a lifestyle? I want to go, have my own flexibility in hours and all that? Or was it more about I want to do something just different, or I want to be the one in control? What drew you to it?
I think there were a lot of factors that just kind of came together. One, I never imagined myself in any sort of, I was client facing, but not like I am now.
Right. Not doing all the sales. And yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm sales, I'm marketing, I'm project management, I'm everything. That's not what I wanted to begin with, but I know I was capable of doing that. And I think just being able to, I was the director of project management for this company. And I remember stepping into that role and thinking wow, I'm going to be able to make some change. And that was just very far from the truth. And that's no fault to everyone there. There's just so much going on that it's hard to make a change unless you are really sitting in that VP level and above seat. And so I just had to make a decision. Do I actually want to keep climbing this corporate ladder? Not necessarily. I didn't see myself there at all. And the company that I was working for too was also going through some tough times. They kept and are still having some layoffs that are just, no one can really control that in a way. So it was a tough time. I kept having to do rounds of layoffs for my team, no fault of their own. And it was a really tough position to be in. Not that the one I'm in now is easier, but I at least have the control, and it's easier to say well, if something hits the fan, then it is my fault and I can take action on that. So I like having that responsibility in that way because it's more empowering. But yeah, I think bringing results that truly, this sounds so corny, but is really life-changing to small to medium businesses was also a big driving factor too. But I probably would not have taken this leap had I been comfortable in my job. So, and it's funny thinking back now too, and especially for anyone thinking about starting their own business. I wasn't thinking about starting my own business at all. I think it was a targeted ad that I saw, and I was like, someone's doing that. Like, yeah, it starts getting you thinking about these things. Um, and so, yeah, if you had asked me, I mean, if this time last year, if I would be running my own business, I would have laughed, absolutely not. But I wouldn't have it any other way at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how quickly I felt that same mindset shift from like, being an employee. And like when I kind of started Draft.dev, I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. Like I didn't expect to be doing this, but whatever, it's a good stopgap. And then a year later, I was like, this is it. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. There's no way I can go back.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That shift is very funny and like also hard to explain to people because they think from the outside looking in, owning your own business seems like all the hard parts and often the payoff takes forever, if ever. You may not really ever get a huge payout out of it, but yeah. So you've done pretty well. I mean, honestly, we talked a few months ago, and I was, we were kind of diving into it, and it sounds like you've kind of figured out some things. You already mentioned 10 clients. I think 10 clients in your first year, like given the type of work you're doing, sounds good. I mean, I don't have benchmark data, so I don't know what's normal, but it sounds good. So you've figured out some ways to get clients. Let's talk about client acquisition. How are people coming to you or finding out about you? Is it mostly your personal network, or are you starting to branch out and do other things? Like what's working?
So I've done a lot of different things, cold calling, which I know a lot of people are terrified to cold call. It's not that I'm terrified to cold call. I'm fine with cold calling, but the return on investment sucks.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Time and effort, it just, that being said, it is a great thing to do. And eventually you're going to hire people where you have an expectation that they're going to cold call. So I'm a firm believer in, walk the walk, be able to manage a team from a place of practice. But so yeah, I did some cold calling. Actually, I don't know. One client, 1 out of the 10 came from cold calling.
What did that cold call look like? Was it basically like go through the phone book, look for small businesses? Or were you looking for certain types of small businesses in the area? Like, what was it like?
I did a lot of different iterations, actually. And I think that's really what marketing and sales comes down to is like, you have an idea, test it, see what the results are, switch directions, or spend more time and effort doing that because it's working. And so, I did a lot of different things. One was like, if I had a specific niche I wanted to focus on, which is generally in like the home services area, because there's a lot of competition, which means they need the digital presence, especially. So I depended on what I was trying to focus on at the time. But some people, try to find people who don't have websites, or people that do SEO, web design, and that sort of thing. Try to find people that don't have websites, or find people that have just a poor online presence, which means you're going to Google and you're Googling their stuff, or a keyword for it, and then just going to like the 10th page.
Going to page 20.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So there was a fair amount of that for sure.
That's funny. That's something that like, I've done cold emails, but cold calls have never really been very viable given the like industry I work with. But I've talked to a lot of people, it's worked really well. But you're right, the ROI on your time is really hard to justify when you're the founder. I think at some point when you can hire somebody and you have a proven script that works and all that, like absolutely, it's like a great thing to just do as a default, especially when you're so niche focused, like your local area, you're looking for home service people, like you kind of have some success stories to tell in that space. You can kind of like really quickly see how that might work. Whereas I think some people in their early days, like you can't just spray and pray and like, call random numbers and hope somebody wants to work with you. Like that's never, you got to have a little more than that, right? What else did you try? Cold outreach. I imagine some came referrals or like, people you knew from your past as well, given that you've been around and working for a while.
Not really. I do have one. I have one that I've worked with actually. My first kid we had at home, a planned home birth. And the midwife that we use, the home birth midwife, is now one of my clients, which is amazing. Because like the work that she is doing is incredible. And so being able to be a part of that and helping her grow that business is just like, I do not take that for granted. But that's really my only referral. I do have one that came from from someone who I don't do business with. I just knew, and they referred me to this other client, and so I guess technically that's a referral as well. But what I ended up doing is joining BNI. I don't know if you've heard of that, Business Networking International, and I have already dropped out of that. But that being said, I think in my position, I was working from home with this, my corporate job for years. And so getting out into the community and meeting new people that are in potential industries that I wanted to work with was important. My BNI group was actually online, and you meet every week. So it was an online meeting. And then you have expectations to hit. It takes a lot of time to be in BNI, but I met, let's see, 3 of my clients from BNI, whether it was like directly in my group or a referral. That one girl was from my BNI group. So that helped, but it became just kind of about 4 hours of my time every week that I was spending towards BNI, and something I just had to let go.
Yeah. And it's a fixed pool of people that you're kind of going back to over and over. And there's different, I imagine there's different value you might get out of it on a regular ongoing basis. But yeah, that's interesting.
The value in it too is, otherwise if you want to network, then you're just trying that group and trying this other group, and it's just kind of spinning your wheels and wasting your time. So I get the BNI expectations is that you are sending referrals to people. You have like metrics that you're going to hit. But the issue with referrals is if someone who doesn't have your services is giving you those referrals, it's probably to someone who doesn't really understand what you do. And then you're starting at square one and you're explaining like why this person, kind of like selling them. And I just wanted to get out of that as well. So yeah, but now it's morphed into more of cold email. The SEO, local side of my business is kind of set, and I am getting referrals, and now I'm getting people. It's been like 8 months since my website's been live. And I haven't put any effort into my own. So like the shoemaker's kids have no shoes situation, right? So I'm getting people to my website now just from organic, Google search, which is great. So I'm letting that kind of simmer, and I've shifted focus into more of like mid-market type clients, like, 10 million plus revenue, not enterprise level, really just,
Yeah, but like solid small businesses, like at 10 million, they've got, a full staff. They've got like a little more sophistication than say the $100,000, like, just somebody just started their little corner restaurant or whatever. It's like, there's a little more to work with there for sure.
Yeah. So cold email is how I get those clients, and it's extremely effective.
This is really good. There's a lot of good stuff to learn. I think some things I pull out of that is that you have from the start, it sounds like, kind of diversified your channels and you're trying new things. I think a lot of people just kind of like live off the back of referrals for way too long in agencies. This is just something I've observed. So it's really cool to hear you already like splitting out into so many different ways of doing this, and you're finding things that work, which is awesome. And then also, I think the whole SEO thing, I do think it's good for agencies, especially if you're a content and SEO focused agency. You probably should have some level of SEO, but it takes time. There's just no substitute for like your site needs to be out there for a bit of time before it's really going to start to pick that up anyway. So it's not like the first customer strategy, right? That's like the probably the 20th or 100th customer is going to start to come in from SEO, maybe earlier than that, depending on what you're doing.
You refine the SEO as you go. So right now, mine is very generalized, like agency, SEO in general, social media in general. But I think what a lot of successful people do is niche down into what you're really good at, and it's really efficient for the agency owner because you're not having to learn like an entirely new industry or niche if you take on a new client, and it's just outside of the niches that you already serve. But two, it allows you to only focus on the ones that are a good margin that you can bring really solid results to. And there are dozens and dozens of SEO based companies that will charge you a couple $100 a month and say that they're doing things and they don't. And that's what I'm competing against. So delivery is just something that I'm not going to compromise. So you have to know where basically people can afford your services. We charge premium services, but it is worth it.
Something that people always ask me, because I was similar when I was starting Draft.dev to like pick a few channels and try them out early on, because I thought it was just important to figure out what works. And I think you've done a good job of that too. How do you have the time? How do you budget your time in order to do that? Because I think that's something I figured out what works for me, but I'm always curious what works for other people. Because clearly, like if you're doing, if you got 2, 3, 4 clients, you could easily fill up all your time with client delivery probably. What have you done, or how did you kind of keep yourself from getting sucked into doing 100% client delivery instead of like splitting your time between the two things?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And it's really hard because, as an agency owner now, I'm very, very committed to my client success. But there is a point of diminishing returns, right? I could spend 40 hours of the same, return that I spend 5. So I think what I do that helps me stay focused is, and something that you mentioned earlier too, made me think of this, is like quarterly check-ins, setting Q1 goals and checking in a couple of weeks before Q2 hits. Like, did we hit them? Were we too ambitious, or did we not spend our time where we needed to? Looking back at, and I do monthly as well. So I set an annual goal, break it into quarters. So it's more bite-sized, but then from there, break it into monthly and write out the things that it's going to take to hit those things, whether it's revenue, whether it's, operations-based, hiring teams, whatever that might be, it all has to be reflected.
And you're doing this for your own business, just with yourself, because you don't have a partner or anybody else. You're just kind of holding yourself accountable this way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did try a couple of partnerships that just early on, it didn't work. And I think that's another thing too, though, pivoting quickly when things aren't working, recognize it instead of just trying to fit, a square peg into a round hole, whatever they say, just recognizing what's actually not working. And I think having and being really in tune with the goals that you set, the work that you've put towards those goals will help with that too, because it's really easy to just say, well, I might not have tried enough, or I might not have done things well. And if you're not having those reflection times to look back and see what you're actually doing and not doing, then it could be really easy for you to make an excuse and just say, I'll give this like another, 3 months. And then it's been a year and you're still spinning your wheels. So just, cut the stuff that doesn't work and move on.
Yeah, it sounds simple, but you're totally right. It is very hard in practice for a lot of people. Yeah, and I think the partnership thing you bring up is a good example of that. So I'm gonna, and if you don't want to answer in too much specifics, I totally get it because these are personal relationships. But like, what went well with those partnerships and what didn't? Like, what did you learn about like the difficulty of partnerships there? Because like, it's tough. A lot of businesses, people try to go in with a partner and it falls apart in the first few months. So I think that's a pretty common challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my mistakes was to assume a 50-50 partnership from the beginning. Also partnering with people that I didn't know. I know they had similar goals and we had conversations before we started these partnerships, but I had a gut feeling that I didn't want to put anything on paper. And looking back on that, I realized that that's because, I just was so unsure of how it would turn out. And so I think if I were to try a partnership in the future, I'd probably do like a trial period. Let's try it for a couple of months, see how we work together and whatnot. To put it frankly, I have very high expectations, and I feel for myself, but also other people. And I feel like that's part of it. It's me, really, honestly.
But you have to be aligned. I mean, that's a huge deal. Like if a partner comes in and they like their expectation is they want to work 10 hours a week and, make a few $100 extra on the side. And you're like, no, I want to make this thing into a real business. I want to grow it. I want to do this. Like, you're clearly going to diverge very quickly and you're not going to like you're not going to work, right? It's just not.
Yeah. I mean, even starting this business, I left a 6-figure salary more than 6 years. I have 3 kids at home and no real, safety net. It's just, it's do or die, sink or swim. And so I never really found other people that were that motivated either. When you're talking about, making sure that you can pay your mortgage and put food on the table, it's very different from like, oh, it'd be cool to make an extra, $10,000 a month, like whatever. Like that's not motivating.
It's a huge motivator. I think this is something I didn't appreciate before having kids and getting married. I had all these little side projects that I would try to do, but like I didn't take any of them that seriously because I didn't need to. It was side money. It was like kind of fun. It was cool. I was like, yeah, it'd be neat if one of these took off, but like I didn't need to make them take off. I had a job and I was like, I didn't need more money or whatever. And then, when I actually started a business, it was because I had a kid and I didn't want to not be helping support. And like, we live in an expensive city. Like there's a lot of like, we had a little bit of savings, but it wasn't like we were just sitting where I could sit for a year and not make money. And it's a good motivator. I mean, like in all seriousness, like it kind of it's a forcing function for picking a business that's going to actually generate profit right off the bat instead of playing around and, testing little random things that you think would be cool. Yeah. Let's talk about the service delivery side because we were kind of, briefly before this, we were talking about some of the challenges of it. And it's funny, I feel this swing every now and then, or every few months, the challenge is sales and customer, like getting new customers and retaining customers. And then it swings the other way where it's service delivery. All of a sudden we made all these sales. We have like this, influx of demand and we're like, oh shit, we got to scale back up our delivery or like we got to hire this new role or whatever. Anyway, so where are you at in that cycle right now? And what's interesting or challenging about the service delivery side today?
Yeah, well, I have 4 people that work for me, all part-time, but different specialties. And that's really on the local like SEO side of my business. I'm about to hire a sales development representative for the other side of my business, the larger, serving larger companies, different delivery. So it's interesting. I really like hiring specialists because I want to make sure that they're just laser focused on that sort of work, but they also have to work well with each other and, give each other, the information that they need and whatnot. So right now it's kind of a preemptive, like getting ready. I've got a couple of clients in the immediate pipeline, like presented and expected to land in the next like couple of weeks. So getting that salesperson up and running that can work both for my company, but also like deploy them for clients is going to be huge. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel you on that. It's just kind of like predicting the future in a way. But I think it comes down to like building really strong engines, like always having a prospecting engine, no matter whether you've landed like 50 clients and you can't take on anymore, you can't stop prospecting because there will be a time that you don't expect that things will drop off and you don't want to have to be caught and in that moment and have to make hard decisions whether to like cut your team or, cut other things that would be really tough to do. I was, part of so many layoffs in my old company and I want to get ahead of that as much as I can.
I like your idea of, and I do similar, like hire fractional specialists, essentially, like, especially when it's the first hire for a new like specialty or capability or something. Like we're doing that right now. We're kind of adding a new service line at Draft.dev and we are, sort of hacking it with the first couple clients. And then we're trying to hire a specialist who would part-time kind of do it for the next few clients. And then eventually that person might be full-time, but one of the challenges I have in a lot of those roles is finding really good fractional people, like people who want to just work part-time and have that specialty. Because a lot of them want full-time jobs, right? And I can't afford a W-2 and benefits right off the bat. I got to like build up to it over time. How have you dealt with that so far? Has it been an issue or have you found any secrets about how you find like the kind of people that are willing to do this part-time on the side?
Yeah. So a lot of my hires are overseas right now, and it's sort of a temporary way to solve for like the bigger picture. How do we get the results that we need for our clients and be able to build towards something larger? And so I have plans in the next like 3 to 6 months to hire a US based sort of manager for the SEO side. that will be someone that all of my existing team report into. And the people that I've hired, though, for the local side, I actually found when I decided that this partnership wasn't going to work, I had to pivot very quickly because in our partnership, as short as it was only a couple of months. The partner was responsible for most of the delivery. So I wanted to make sure that remained the same, if not elevated, and jumped on Google and was searching for how am I going to put this together. Someone mentioned VA services, and I was like, I don't need a VA for this. I need specialists. And then I ended up, hours of research later, I found a VA company that employs the people. So HR is routed through them. They have their own team leads, but I ended up using people from that group, which has actually been really, really great. I just now ended up hiring another resource from them. So we've got a couple of SEO specialists, and it's really easy to add to the team. You still interview and you still, you review resumes and all this stuff, but it takes away that HR part of the problem, honestly. And so once I get my US based manager in place, then I plan to kind of swap out with people that we hire directly under the business instead of having that contractor relationship somewhere. Because, we're going to be a large business. So we have to hire that in on our own.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, right? I think, the early, like the flexibility you get from part-time fractional people, contractors, even, going through, we have a similar kind of agency that does some placements with us, with both our companies. And it's super helpful in the early-ish phases. But eventually the challenge can be, like you're pointing out here, if they're cycling through, if say that person's changing roles every few months or every year, they go on to find a full-time role. Now you got to backfill them, replace them, retrain them. And, there's some cost to that. It's not massive if they're fairly well trained on the, outset, but still there's something, and you're losing some, consistency. So it is nice to have the full-time people there.
What's nice about this one is that they are employed full-time. So the company that hires them,
and you're just paying a fractional part of that, right?
Yeah. So 40 hours, they're working 20. So I'm paying for that 20 hours. And then, but the biggest issue that I've come across is actually when we're ready to level up, then we're doubling those hours. We don't necessarily need double that delivery time. So margins take a hit for a little bit, but that's okay. It's all for the growth. In the interim, I'm exploring, and what I do is just test and iterate. And right now I'm testing an outsourcing partner that will kind of take the entire SEO side, and they have an internal team and they deliver on it. I don't necessarily love that because I can't control all of that delivery. So I know if I do go that route, I'm going to be micromanaging the heck out of that engagement, which then again, it's about my time. So should I just pay for extra help or spend more time on it myself?
Yeah, you said this earlier. It's all about test and figure out. There's no right answer, obviously, Shannon. There's agencies that do it one way, there's agencies that do it another, and nobody's right and wrong. It's all about just figuring out what works for you and your clients and the way you want to run it.
I've also found, and I'm hiring directly this salesperson for the other side of my business, and really looking at South African candidates there. And a lot of them, I don't want to profile at all, but knowing the cost of living is so different in South Africa, the language barrier is minimal because English is primary language. So when you're thinking about the SEO side of my business, the local side, they're really behind the scenes. I'm client facing, but the sales side, I really have to consider what is the most effective person that will also be able to communicate and take on what is being asked. And so that's what I'm exploring on the sales side for the other part of my business.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I've thought we'll have to check in on that one because I've struggled with hiring salespeople overseas. The issues have always been like more of like cultural understanding and awareness rather than language, little time zones too. Because if you get like clients on the West Coast and they're trying to hop into a call somebody in South Africa, there's kind of limited thing unless they want to work on an off schedule. But that said, I mean, we work with great people in South Africa that work in other roles, and they're fantastic. So I definitely agree. There's some good talent there, and you're right. Lower cost of living. They have a good education system. They all speak English. Internet's fairly reliable compared to some countries, and culturally, they seem pretty aware of like typical U.S. culture norms. Again, this is like, I think the world is getting smaller in that way though, because 20 years ago, when I worked as an intern, we had people like from overseas working with us on different projects. The cultural language barriers were way bigger than they are today. Now, when I like interview people for engineering roles and things that are in India, they are very aware of like the random American like cultural memes that make their way over there. It's like, it's so different than it used to be, because like they used to have very different culture. Now it's like, it almost feels like we're in this global culture where people just kind of see the same stuff, like with some differences, but it's not as hard as it used to be.
I think remote work has played a big role there because they kind of have to be. There are a lot of U.S. based companies hiring, overseas, Philippines, India, South Africa, and I think it's the experience. If they are already working remotely for other companies based in other countries, they just have a higher awareness of those things too.
The other topic I wanted to talk about today, before we start wrapping up, is just the feelings of being a business owner versus being an employee. And you're a mom too, and you're married. You have a partner that nice guy. I've gotten to meet him a couple times, Scott. You've got this life like beyond just the business, right? We all do. But this is something that we don't talk about most of the time in these really tactical podcasts about, how we get clients and improve our service. What's been challenging or on the flip side, been really gratifying about being a business owner? Like, what are some of the highs and lows?
I feel like that's such a loaded question. I feel like there's a lot of things I could say about that. It's scary to take a bet on yourself and, take this leap of faith and have no security net, and just, you have to have a conviction that it's going to work, or it's not even that it's going to work, it's that you're going to make it work. And that commitment to making it work is pivotal. I think the people that don't have that commitment is just, the ones that you see a year down the road. Oh, I haven't really put a lot of time and effort into that. And what I found too is I was trying to do this, and I never intended to quit my job before I had my income replaced. I didn't have a client before I quit my job. Like, that is scary. But what I realized is that I could not juggle both. I couldn't be, the employee that I needed to be leading this department of project managers, and I could not be the business owner that I needed to be. And I had to pick a path. But I think trying to juggle those two would have been a disaster for both businesses, So I think the sooner you can pick a path, probably the better. But also, it is really challenging, just like we were talking about, juggling kids and their schedules. Mine are 4, 3, and 1, and someone's always sick. And so it's going to be that way regardless. So it's kind of like, I think for me, choosing what kind of hard, that you're signing up for, and choosing to like bet on myself is something that I remind myself of a lot. It'd be easier maybe if I had sick days and I could take sick days and whatnot. But instead, just trying to focus on the processes that I'm putting up into place. My team's success is really about, and this sounds really off, but it's about how I'm setting them up. It's not about me. It's about what I'm doing to help them. And so it's just, again, it goes back to like that constant iteration. And every single day I look at my schedule and I'm like, what are the 2 things I need to do regardless of whatever else happens? And just having that really diligent, focus to your day, your month, your quarter, anything else that comes up, you can handle, my kids get sick or I need to go pick one up, or right now we don't have aftercare. So 2 of the 3 are home half the day. And so, I have to rearrange my schedule. It's a constant thing, but I think it's going to be difficult no matter what. And, like I said, I could not go back to being an employee. No matter what, maybe if I were paid a few $1 million, I don't, not even that, maybe not even that. But it's just the fact that there's just a different level of ownership when if things aren't working, you're the one that, is in control of that. So figure out a way to make it work. Something that I do that I don't necessarily have time for, but that I make time for is signing up for just to be around people that know more than me. Yeah. The instant that I feel like I know everything is probably the instant that my business will go up in flames, because there's always someone that's going to be better, always someone that I can learn from. And so finding where those people are and then joining that group, that has really pushed me to the next level, reminding me of the big picture and, why we're doing this. And
so many good insights there, Shannon. I mean, the surrounding yourself with people who are, I don't know what the right most is, but who are in some way better than you or more experienced than you in something is very hard, especially when you're an entrepreneur and you're not given a coworker or a group to be working with, right? I think that was something it took me a little bit of time to figure out, where do I go find people who are running bigger, more successful businesses than me? And how do I hang out with them for a few hours every week? Because
they don't have time.
Yeah, they don't have it. Right. And I, what do I have to offer them? It was a little bit of my own self-limiting belief of I don't know what I could offer them. But I think as obviously as you've grown this business, you're going to start getting into higher and higher levels of access to people that are bigger and bigger as far as their accomplishments and the way they drive themselves too. So yeah, but take advantage of that, because it's easy to just kind of let yourself sit at status quo. I think that's what a lot of small business owners do, but you can absolutely shoot higher if you surround yourself with other people who've done it, because they'll kind of show you it's possible. So last question I have for you. Actually, I have a couple quick last questions. First one, do you read books? Are you much of a book reader? I personally read much less than I used to when I had before having kids, but I do occasionally get an audiobook in. Anything you've read in the last couple of years that really kind of helped shape you or push you on this entrepreneurial journey?
Man, there was one, because I don't come from a sales background. Sales is not my thing. I'm like, hey, here are the benefits. Do you want to do this? Yes, no, okay, whatever. No. So it's definitely an area that I could improve. And there's this one, Never Split the Difference. That's been helpful.
Yes.
And yeah, but I was looking at, I track the books I read in Goodreads because I just don't remember. And a lot of them are just, fun, light reads. But last year I read, I think 63 books. And this year to date, I've read 15. So
yeah.
Which tracks, I'm so skeptical of self-help books and things like that. But I do have a bunch of recommendations that are on my list that I want to get to, because I think it's really important to just keep learning.
To me, it kind of goes to the same idea of surrounding yourself with smart people. A good book is a chance to surround yourself with a smart, ambitious author, ideally. Now, not every book delivers on that. And I think, to your point, I actually agree. A lot of business books could be a blog post, but publishers force them to be 250 pages because that's what sits on a shelf. I kind of am, that kind of thing I can live without. I'll read the summary. But there are some, I think, out there that, for me at least, really hit. And I took enough away from that. I'm that's a book I want to spend time with. It sort of elevates my thinking. And again, so I always ask this question because I'm similar to you, and I used to read a lot more. I don't read as many, but I always have a good backlog of things to read.
Yeah. What are some of your top?
I feel like the best book books are situational in a way. Like, so at different points in my life, different things have spoken to me, and I go back and read them and I'm like, yeah, maybe it's not as much of a impact anymore. So there's different books at different times. Back when I first got out of college, the 40-hour work week was one that I read, or 4-hour work weeks. Yeah. 4-hour work week. Tim Ferriss book, and super impactful for me about just rethinking the way that I could do work. And I didn't end up doing everything from it or become an entrepreneur at that point, but it kind of like planted this seed and made me think about like, oh, if I start my own business, I can kind of do it however I want. And it was really a big like thing I thought about when I started Draft.dev. I like went into it and was like, we're not going to have Slack. Nobody's going to be hitting me on my phone at all hours. I'm going to be on email a few hours a day, and that's it. And if we can't make that work, we just won't run the company. So things like that, like they did stick with me, but it I don't necessarily say to everybody, you have to read that book. It's so amazing. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. This last year, I've been working on building a bigger vision. One of the books that kind of helped me a lot with that was called The Alchemist, which is a allegory. It's a story about a guy chasing a big vision, and in doing that, there's a lot of lessons that you kind of learn along the way. So it varies, but yeah. Last question I have for you, Shannon. If we check in on you in a year, which is my hope that we can schedule a time in a year or so to check in on you, check in on Acorn to Oak, see how things are going. What do you hope to have accomplished? You've got your year-long goals. Like what's on your number 1 or 2? I'm
actually in the middle of writing what goals might look like in the next year or so, because everything has just changed so much in the last 9 months. But I would say, I have a really solid revenue goal of, probably under 5 million, but close to that mark in the next year. And of course, that means massive growth for the team. So process, operations, and dialing that in and removing myself, but not giving up any of our delivery and just finding better ways to deliver, which is what I'm doing with cold email on this other side of my business, and then adapting that to some of my local clients and making it a no-brainer for them to grow their business with me. And so, finding really smart ways to do that. But I'd say a year from now, outside of revenue goals, I think I'm going to have maybe 20 clients. I don't want to have a massive number of clients, but that are all my friends, working with really good people, really great companies, and just on a level where there's respect and partnership in those client relationships. That's the area I'm going, kind of moving from a service delivery, service provider to, yes, of course we're going to keep delivering, but it's more of a partnership, non-financial partnership with these companies where I come in and consult, but also do the work and become partners with the people that are running these companies.
I love it. It's a very good specific goal and a good place for us to leave it today. And we'll check back in a year and see how far you've come. Shannon Beasley, this has been a pleasure to catch up. And I know we got to talk a couple weeks ago before this and we caught up a little more, but this is just so fun to hear somebody who's on this similar journey after, a 10-year break. So really great to catch up with you. Where can people follow up with you or find you online to follow up with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. My business name, Acorn to Oak Strategies for everything. So on Instagram, Facebook is Acorn to Oak Strategies, and so is LinkedIn. But my personal LinkedIn is there as well. And I'm excited to start putting together my own case studies, video case studies, and have that posted on socials in the next, 3 months or so. So follow along.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll keep up with that. Good to talk to you, Shannon. We'll talk again soon. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.